The Xbox Series X is the most powerful console. We have some scam consoles or potential scam consoles to talk about. Diablo Immortal is doing absolutely incredible, going against what a lot of people thought would happen, especially after all the complaints that came out about it. So since the announcement and launch of the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, there has been a continuous debate as to which console is the more powerful console. Now, in my opinion, it's extremely obvious which one is the most powerful console. Right since they showed off the specifications between the Series X and the PlayStation 5, there is no ambiguity there. The Xbox Series X is the more powerful console, and in the long run of this generation, between those two versions of the console, the Xbox Series X will have games performing better on it. And one of the channels or companies that is known for doing these technical comparisons between games has been Digital Foundry. They have done lots of great work when looking at how games perform both on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. They've also taken a lot of flack where you have the console fanboys from both sides kind of saying that they prefer one console over the other, but they may have their opinions, they may have their preferences, but when they're showing off the comparisons between games between the two consoles, I would say that it is relatively objective, especially when you just take a look at the results. Now, John Linneman is one of the guys that gets a lot of flack for this type of stuff. People saying he's a console fanboy and all these different things that they throw out at him. And he put out a tweet kind of going over what he has done in terms of the complete list of videos and comparing the platforms between each other. And in general, he's only done 15 platform comparisons between the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. Here's what he says. I want to share this over the last year. This is pretty much the complete list of videos I've worked on. Turns out only 4 of them are platform comparisons. I've noted the best versions determined from those videos. I'm happy with the shift to more retro and big releases, and you can see here how he denotes the best version console on the side here. Continues on here to say, more info. Here's what I've done back to the start of the pandemic in early 2020. So over the past 28 months or so, I've done 15 platform comparisons. For console warriors, Xbox took the top spot 8 times, 5 were a draw or broken everywhere, and 2 went to the PlayStation 5. So if you just look at the list of games that John Linneman has compared between the Xbox and the PlayStation 5, the Xbox has been the console that performs better. And this makes a ton of sense. To me, it's just kind of basic statistics that over the long term of this generation, you're going to have lots of comparisons between games. And you look at the specs within the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X is going to have more games overall that perform better on the console. Yes, there will be some anomalies there where the PS5 performs better. One of the big ones that really was a huge console war ammunition to be used was with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which when it came out was looking better, performing better on the PlayStation 5. He actually addresses this here. So people posting nonsense about a comment regarding AC Valhalla, one of the games which did perform faster on PS5, and trying to suggest that it applies to everywhere are, part of my French, full of shit. And you go through the comments here, you have people talking about why they think it's this way or whatever, why people get into console wars over this. This person here says, I think the problem is we are not seeing a major gap in performance or fidelity we had in PS4 Pro and Xbox One X comparisons. I think people are expecting that with the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. That's definitely not the case. PS5 is holding its own against the Xbox Series X somehow. And John replies, honestly, the hardware is so similar to the point that any differences are typically down to developer implementation. This isn't like the old days. Most games are fantastic on both new machines with just a few exceptions. And I think that is one of the main things that people completely forget, is that the consoles right now is not like back in the day when you had like Sega versus Nintendo, where there was just completely different specs in those consoles in terms of how they did music, in terms of how the graphics showed up, and all of that type of stuff. Now, when you look at the Series X and the Series S, they're both AMD. They both have pretty much the same architecture. Just the Xbox Series X objectively is a more powerful console. But the debate will always be there because obviously the Xbox Series X isn't outperforming every single PS5 game. But as John mentions, a lot of this does have to go up to the developers. The developers need to be able to optimize these games properly. If they're not optimized properly, they're not going to perform well. It's the same thing when we talked about the build of the Xbox Series X versus PlayStation 5 when these first were announced. And when I took a look at them just from my armchair analysis, it's pretty obvious that the Xbox Series X is better engineered than the PlayStation 5. Just look at the size of the PS5, look at what they have when they tore it down, look at how they built it compared to how the Xbox Series X was built. There was just a lot more ingenuity, in my opinion, with the Xbox Series X and putting that thing together, getting all that power into that smaller console. All of this stuff, I feel like people love to argue and debate over, when in reality, in my opinion, it's literally right in front of your eyes, and there is just an objective look at these two types of things. You look at the specs, you look at the build of these two consoles, and the Xbox Series X has the PlayStation 5 beat. Now, will it show up in real world performance? Based off of John Lindemann's videos, so far it is showing up as more games do perform better on the Xbox Series X, and I will bet we'll continue to see this as the console generation goes on. Now, what does all this really mean? Are you going to be playing just a bad version of the game on the PlayStation 5? Absolutely not. One of the main things he also mentions here, like I said, there is a slight difference between them, but you're still going to have a great experience on the PS5 with the same third-party game as you're going to have on the Xbox Series X. For people who are really looking into the deep dive comparisons of these two things, it's really just to look at the console wars side of things, or people who are just interested in the technical specs between them and how they end up performing in the real world environments. So a new console competitor is entering the market, although this one you may want to keep your eyes on as more of a scam than a product that may actually make its way out to market and really do any damage. So this is going to be called the Polium console. It is the first NFT games console. So the console is from the company Polium. It's called the Polium 1, and they say it's the world's first multi-chain gaming console that will be capable of running games built on different blockchains, and the console will be powerful enough to run high performance games and will be easy to use for a traditional gamer who doesn't understand Web 3. Now, the game console is supposed to be coming out in Q3 of 2024, and people can be pre-ordering it if they buy the Polium Pass. It's an NFT on the Ethereum network, which 10,000 will be minted. And with this console, there is a controller as well, as you can see it up here. And on this controller will be a fingerprint scanner for security, a wallet button to give players quick access to the console's multi-chain wallet design for trading, swapping, staking, and receiving cryptocurrency. So I mean, NFT, blockchain, all that type of stuff getting into gaming has been met with just so much pushback. It's crazy that these companies are still really pushing forward for this stuff, thinking that people are going to eventually accept it in the future. There have been so many scams when it has come to cryptocurrency and NFTs, and this almost seemingly seems like this could end up being just another big scam. One of the big things for me that gives it away, that it may not work out and become a consumer product that people want to use and people buy, is that it says here that the console will be capable of 8K HDR at 120 frames per second and ray tracing, which I absolutely do not believe. I don't think this is going to happen whatsoever. You look right now with games, they're having trouble on the current generation consoles having ray tracing within 4K at 60 frames per second. So to think you're going to have 8K HDR at 120 frames per second with ray tracing in 2024, I think they're absolutely out of their mind. But hey, you never know. Maybe they have some crazy technology up their sleeve that nobody knows about. And someone pointed out that the logo literally is just the GameCube logo upside down. And Polium responded saying, it looks familiar, but GameCube has a G and the cube represents their name. Our cube represents blockchain and the P stands for Polium. So I guess take that for what you will. I guess you can see the P here, but it really does look like just an upside down GameCube logo, which I mean isn't a good look because that's a pretty prominent logo in the console market. Now, in terms of all the criticism they have been taking for the announcement of this console, they did respond here saying, we have been receiving fear, uncertainty, and doubt and criticism regarding our ability to execute. To clarify, it's 4 of us that are building the functional prototype for the console and controller. We have experience in hardware and software development. We are currently doing the power tree for the console's board. We should have functional prototype by November or before. When we will show the prototype live on YouTube or have a well-trusted influencer show you all. The prototype will prove that the console can run games that are on different blockchains and built with different programming languages. We will not take any pre-orders or funding until we show the prototype, and if the community is interested, once we have a functional prototype, we will build the console for manufacturing. And then they say there will be games on the console and they will make some announcements soon. And in terms of the logo, they wanted to reiterate, they did not copy the GameCube logo, but they are listening to the community and will hire a new illustrator to design a more original logo. So there you have it. This is going to be another console competitor, the Polium one, that's going to be playing NFT games, which is, again, NFTs, cryptocurrency, blockchain, all that stuff, getting into gaming. Not something that the majority of the community, I don't think, wants to see. But I guess if this is just its own separate NFT console where it's not impeding on games that are coming out on the other devices, it may not be as bad. But just keep your eye out on this if you're interested in this type of stuff. And just to make sure that it isn't a scam if you start seeing it popping up, as a lot of things tend to be ending up being scams in blockchain, but also in the creation of new consoles, which brings me over to the next topic that I wanted to go over, and it is the Intellivision Amico. So I know this may not be the most popular thing on this channel to talk about. I don't know if anybody really knows too much about the Intellivision Amico, but myself, I have been following this because Intellivision was the very first console that I ever really played. Not because I was born in the 70s or anything like that, but my dad had it, and it was in my house, and I checked it out. It was very, very early on in the gaming industry with very rudimentary graphics and all that type of stuff. But it was pretty cool to be able to experience one of the first consoles ever made. And then I saw this announcement for the Intellivision Amico, which was a bringing back of the Intellivision with more family-friendly games, but the controller has like the spinning wheel, all that stuff that was on the original Intellivision. I was pretty interested to see what this thing was all about. It was originally supposed to come out in 2020. It got delayed, and it's continuously got delayed with all of these different types of excuses and a lot of crazy stuff happening, almost making it seem like this is getting into scam territory for the Intellivision Amico, with tons of crowdfunding money that was taken, pre-orders that haven't been refunded yet. And now we're seeing it get even worse, as there is this story here saying that the Intellivision Amico's trademark has been changed to abandoned. Now, basically what this means is the USPTO last month said that the application above is abandoned because we did not receive within 6 months of the notice allowance issue date a statement of use or a request for extension of time to file a statement of use, meaning that right now the Intellivision trademark to be able to be used for these consoles is pretty much no more, which I would say is really pointing towards the end of the Intellivision Amico saga. The only thing that could keep this alive is they still have 6 months to revive it if they want to revive it. But if you've been following this at all, there's been lots of stuff that's been going on recently where the CEO of Intellivision, Phil Adams, says here about refunds: we're slowly processing refund requests, but the public's uncertainty of our status in the last few months have understandably led to an influx of pre-order refunds requested. Because of the reduced staff and the financing requirements for continued operation, our responses to and processing these requests have been delayed. Rest assured that our intention is to honor all refund requests, meaning their intention is, if they are able to get the money back to you, if they don't go bankrupt, is to give your money back. And then previous to that, they even released like a bunch of games for the Intellivision Amico without even a console out there, and people had spent money on buying these games, which I see it as another crowdfunding effort to get more money to create the Intellivision Amico. But it's been years that it's continuously got delayed. There's been complete silence. There's really been no progress or updates on the manufacturing and the shipping of these consoles coming out anytime soon. In all reality, this is probably going to go down as a console that just never was able to get the right management, the right people under it to get it going and released. But at this point, people who are still holding on hope for the Intellivision Amico, it's almost seemingly in the scam territory side of things, as they put out all this out there. They put all these videos hyping up this console to be something that was going to have all of these extra features. Even they had NFTs involved with the Intellivision Amico, and just a lot of stuff that got people excited. I think there's like an entire community on YouTube that really is supporting this thing, but right now it looks like it is completely abandoned. And if you're somebody who had pre-ordered this or was holding out hope, this may not be the best news for you. Finally, let's talk some Diablo Immortal. So Diablo Immortal has had a lot of backlash, has a terrible user score for Metacritic, but I've heard people who have played the game actually say it's a pretty decent game. You get plenty of hours of free gameplay where you don't have to spend any microtransactions. But the biggest criticism for Diablo Immortal obviously is the microtransactions, where people are spending like thousands of dollars and stuff on this game to get certain items for, particularly, I believe, the PvP aspect of the game. But people thought that because of these microtransactions, the game was going to be failing. It wasn't going to be a Diablo game that took off. And I was on the other side of the coin saying that people are already spending millions of dollars on it. I think they had like 24 million within the first 2 weeks of launch. And the spending for Diablo Immortal is continuing, as this says here that they have been making more than $1 million per day, even with all the criticism that is going on. Now, these stats come via mobilegamer.biz, and they are looking at just the amount of money that's being made within these different app stores. They're saying here that the data collected by mobilegamer.biz suggests that the mobile Diablo Immortal is the biggest launch ever for the series, and that biggest launch has earned Blizzard $49 million within its first month with 10 million downloads. That $49 million also does not include the 30% that Blizzard has to pay for Apple and Google to have the app up on their store. So it's pretty big what Diablo Immortal is doing in terms of its figures. They say here, let's get into the App Magic figures. Taking a look at downloads first, the game peaked on its third day of global release, June 4th, at 1.32 million downloads in one day. After its first week on sale, total downloads stood at 6.85 million, and at day 30, they were at 10.35 million, which again makes this as well the biggest launch in terms of the amount of people that have the game. Because if you look back, Diablo 3 sold 3.5 million on its first day and 6.3 million in its first week back in 2012, but later suggested that it didn't even hit $10 million in sales until June 30th, which was 6 weeks after the launch of the game. So right now, within the first month, Diablo Immortal is doing better than Diablo 3. Then it says here, Blizzard earned 2.4 million on June 11th and 11.9 million after the first week on sale, and by day 30 totaled $49 million, which is just absolutely nuts. So all of the people complaining about the microtransactions within Diablo Immortal, all the people saying that this game was going to fail because of these microtransactions, were just completely off base and wrong, at least as of right now, because people are spending the money on it, and companies are going to continue to take advantage of it. They're going to continue to put out these free-to-play games, especially on the mobile market, where, I mean, it's prominent there, where people are going to have tons of microtransactions in those games, and that's where they make all of their money. So the game is doing really well, whether you're on the side for it or against it. And at the end of the day, if you're Phil Spencer and you're Xbox, you're looking at the amount of money that this mobile game is making. It just bolsters where Xbox is trying to go in terms of expanding their portfolio to every device out there with native mobile games, with games like Candy Crush, which they're going to be getting from King. And then you have Diablo Immortal here as well. That's it for me, guys. Let me know your thoughts on the Xbox Series X and John Linneman's comparisons. What do you think about the Intellivision Amico and that NFT console? What are your thoughts on Diablo Immortal and it making $49 million in its first month? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you're new here, you liked what you saw, consider hitting that subscribe button. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for your support, and I'll catch you in the next video.